I got to tell you, my son's the time he made me laugh. I said, Noah, here's my favorite joke my father told me. He says, okay. He says, guy says, hey, the invisible man is here. The other guy says, tell him I can't see him. So Noah says, yeah, Dad. He said, that's a better, I'm going to improve that joke. The invisible man's here. And the guy says, tell him to go f*** himself.
This is going to be difficult because I'm interested in really everything that I know of that you've done, which means there's a bunch of stuff you have done that I'd be even more interested in, but I don't really know how to ask you about that. And I would desperately like not to ask you a series of questions that you've already answered ad nauseum over the last 2 months in the course of promoting your amazing new book and the film. Henry Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through your book, and I've only seen the trailer for Henry Johnson, and I'm just going to say, I was never opposed to Shia LaBeouf at all, but I never saw him as a great actor, and I'm starting to think he might be.
Oh, I always saw him as a great actor.
Did you?
I mean, oh, yeah. If you look at him in Honey Boy or Peanut Butter Falcon, this guy's, I never worked with a better actor. So he plays a convict in this, and it's a stunning performance.
That's insanely high cotton. You've never worked with a better actor?
No, I've worked with actors who were as good. And I worked with everybody, but I never worked with a better actor.
Wow.
Well, the other thing is true, too. It's the when an actor says, give me this stuff, I'll say it all day. That's a spectacular compliment.
Yeah.
When they say, my God, thank you, glug, glug, glug. That's what he said. And that's what Malkovich said to him. I'm about to do another movie movie with John Malkovich and Al Pacino and Shia and Rebecca Pidgeon. Everybody's going to be in it. Patty Lupone. And these are guys I've worked with forever. And when they say, yeah, like I did a play with Malkovich in London in the West End. And I sent him the script one day and like 5 o'clock in the morning in Boston. He called me back 2 hours later, said, yeah, I read it twice, I'll do it. Where are we going when? Which is the best thing in having a coterie and also having a certain reputation.
Regarding the coterie,
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always happen, but it seems to happen a fair amount, you know, when you think of Scorsese and De Niro, et cetera. How does it happen? Like, is it the result of maybe The Spanish Prisoner? I'm thinking of Rebecca Pidgeon. And, like, when did you know that this was a group of people who you were absolutely going to work with?
Well, it was always a group of people. I mean, I started out in Chicago 50 years ago and more on the stage with William H. Macy, and then it was Laurie Metcalf, and then there was Billy Peterson, and then there was Malkovich, and his people came in, and we were all part of a garage theater, and Joey Mantegna and Dennis Franz, all part of a garage theater milieu.
Is Sinise in this orbit at
Sinise,
this point?
yeah. Gary and John came in with the Steppenwolf Theater. They're a little bit younger than we were, and they took over our space. We had this space in a garage on Halsted Street, around the corner from Wrigley Field, and then they took over before us. But Laurie Metcalf had been working with us previously. It was a great time. It's like what you know is what you learn. So what we learned was get together with the people who say, you bet. And one of them says, you know what, I'm going to write the next play. Say, yeah, sure. I'm going to direct the next play. Yeah, sure. So that's how you build a theater company. And that's how you create not only actors, but writers.
And trust, maybe?
Well, of course, because, you know, the Chicago cops say of their partner, the best place, they say, you know what, f*** it, you're right, and if you're not right, f*** it anyway. So that's kind of been, like I just called Patty Lupone, you know, I just called on the way up. I said, I'm doing this new thing, I need you to. And because with these people who are your brothers and sisters in arms, the answer, unless they're dead or otherwise engaged, is yes, sure.
Right.
So what could be better?
Not much, but philosophically, I did want to ask you, because you kind of glossed over it when you were just talking about what an extraordinary time that was. Did you know it was an extraordinary time when you were in the midst of it?
Of course we did.
What do you mean, of course?
Because we were having the time of our lives.
But you hadn't lived enough to know that it was true. It was the time of your life up until that point. But you know what I mean? Like, you're older than you've ever been right now.
Well, aren't we all?
Yes, we are. But when I think about your own life, not just as an artist, but as a person with ideas and opinions and strongly held beliefs, and the way many of those changed and morphed.
Well, beliefs change, certainly, but my dedication that I learned very, very young to, I hate to use the word art, but I guess I have to art has never changed. The idea was that's where the fun was. So to say, well, how could you say that was the best time of your life when you were young? Well, you could say that to the first time the guy's 20 years old, he falls head over in heels with a girlfriend, and they go off to the beach for a wild weekend. You could say, how could you say, you didn't have enough experience to say that was the most magnificent thing. But being young doesn't debar you from having ecstatic experiences.
Of course not. But I'm just, I forget who you were talking to, but somebody asked a similar question. And you didn't say because that's where the fun was. You said because that's where the money was.
Yeah, but that's not where the money was. And that was part of the joy of being young and in Chicago when they say to be in England, was a very dream, and to be young was very heaven. We were all very young. We were working very hard, having the time of our life. And there wasn't any money, there was no chance of any money because you couldn't make money doing theater in a garage. So what we were doing, just like that British group, the Beatles, we were working day jobs in order to put on these plays at night because we were having the time of our life. And I always felt after that, when I'm directing something, either on stage or in the movies, if you're not having the time of your life, you're in a lot of trouble.
Joke's on you.
And the thing is, as a director, both on the stage and in the movies, there's a person who's in charge of seeing that everyone's having the time of their life, and that person's the director. And if something other than that is happening, someone is at fault, and it's the director. Because why not? I mean, what's more fun than making a movie or putting on a play? Nothing.
But what's more different than making a movie or putting on a play? One is rooted in, as we were making our coffee and tea earlier, we were talking about the business of live. Live. An hour takes an hour. A half hour takes a half hour. My appearance on Trey Gowdy, you mentioned the other night, took 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I knew exactly, I knew that's how long it was going to take before I sat down. There's no cut, in other words. Movies are all just cuts, right? And so how do you think when you're writing a play versus writing a screenplay that you know is going to be filmed?
Well, when you write a screenplay, you want to... Sound is very important because when you write a screenplay, the sound that comes from the screen is going to have to compete against the sound of people eating popcorn. But when you write a play, the sound that comes from the stage is going to have to compete against the sound of the people turning their programs because they're bored out of their mind.
Soon may the noblemen come to bring a bottle for everyone. One day when the waiting is done, we'll take a drink and go.
The audience, then, is not too dissimilar. You've got people who are fidgeting. It's a war for their attention, essentially. But there's a sparseness about the stage, I think, that you can get away with, that you can't necessarily in film. Although sometimes your stuff migrates pretty well, but when I think of the Fantastics or Our Town, right, or some of these great plays that were written, I guess before you were writing, I think maybe close to it, Wilder and Tom Jones.
Yeah, Our Town is in, I believe it's in the 30s, and the Fantastics. I actually worked in the first production of the Fantastics off Broadway, and that was 1967. It had been running for a year, ran for 40 years more, and I was a house manager, an usher, and assistant stage manager. So I had to say that frickin' thing 8 times a week.
So you hate it now, or?
No, I hated it then.
My point is, what the heck was that in the way of a set? And how important is a set? Really?
Very good point. A set is not important. Here's how we know that we can listen to a great play on the radio when we lose nothing. So it's most play. The question is, can you do a play on a bare stage? And if you can, it's probably a pretty good play. The next question is it possible to create a scenic environment that's better than a bare stage? And the answer is yes, but it takes a lot of talent.
Writing talent, directing talent,
No,
acting
it
talent?
takes a designing talent.
Oh.
To do something that's better than a bare stage, because what you want to do is engage the audience's attention, and you want to engage their suspension of disbelief is one way to say it. But the other things you want them to say, yeah, okay, tell me a story. So most of the things that are called production values in the theater are garbage. They're trying to gild the lily, right, rather than to focus the attention.
Do you believe production is the enemy of authenticity?
Well, no, you got to produce a play. The question is, what are you going to? You're going to make choices, whatever you do. The question is, as they say, first do no harm. Even if it's a play on stage with 3 chairs, you got to pick the chairs, you got to pick the costumes, and you got to pick the lighting. But the question is, what do you do next? And the answer always is maybe something, and maybe not nothing. But what you don't want the audience to do is leave a play talk or a movie talking about the production values, because that means they had a wretched time.
So where's that leave musical theater? Where does it leave Moulin Rouge? Where does it leave the spectacle of all of it?
I don't know. See, what's happened in theater, both the Broadway became a tourist destination, and so what the tourists want to say legitimately is spectacle. People don't want to go to Las Vegas and see The Lower Depths by Maxim Gorky, right? They want to see a spectacle.
Yeah.
They want to see,
Cirque du Soleil.
Well, of course, they want to see tits and ass, and they want to see lights, and they want to see people jumping off of things. That's a spectacle. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not the business I'm in.
What business are you in exactly?
I'm in the business of plays and movies. I'm in the business of telling a story. So if you can tell a story, it's like telling a joke. There's no difference, right? If I say, an ostrich, a priest, and a whore go into a laundromat, doesn't matter what costume I have on, right? I've just almost semi-hypnotically induced you to go along and enter into my fantasy.
It does beg a series of questions that I'm going to insist on answering.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, when you say an ostrich, are you talking the Asian or the African? This is a cassowary, I assume, with 2, not 3 claws.
Yeah,
also.
well, okay. This cassowary is very, very different than an ostrich, which is very different than a kiwi. A lot of people would consider that a microaggression. I'm one of them.
I saw an ostrich once
charge
an open door on an F-150 and tear it off its hinge. These things can go from 0 to 40 miles an hour in about 6 steps.
Yeah.
Their breastplate is so thick you could shoot it with a .38 caliber and the slug will bounce off. Their knees are all, they're that jacked up, crazy power. Their eyes are bigger than the eyes of a shark, and their brains are about the size of a marble. These are dinosaurs. They'll kick you in the next week.
They're pug ugly. But did you know that an armadillo can beat an ostrich over 100 yards?
In a foot race?
Yeah.
How explain what, stamina? Like the ostrich peaks to us? What?
No, I just made that up.
Oh, see. Well, there you go. That's not really a story so much as
No. That's a lie.
You're
It's
just
called a
yanking
lie.
a prevarication.
Yeah.
Is it okay to lie to the audience?
No, of course not. Listen, how would one lie to the audience? One can abuse the audience. Very easy to abuse.
Well, let's say this ostrich, this priest, and this whore didn't go into a laundromat.
Aha.
Have we just been lied to?
No.
Or is that some sort of literary permission you've given yourself?
Here's how you abuse the audience. I'll show you how.
Believe me, listeners of this podcast know.
Oh, good. So I say, what an armadillo, an ostrich, and a nun go into a whorehouse. So you're waiting. You've given up your reason. For example, you parked it over there. Say, no, I haven't lost my mind. I'm just giving it up for a second. You are going to tell me a story at the end of which I'm probably going to laugh because something was revealed to me about myself, my thought process I didn't know. Ha, 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 ha. But if I say an ostrich, an armadillo, and a priest go into a whorehouse, and you say, yeah, and I say, how dare you respond like that? I mean, why would you think a priest would go into a whorehouse?
With an armadillo or possibly an ostrich or the aforementioned nun.
Yeah.
What you're saying is we buy the premise, whatever it is, unless you happen to come across a person of extraordinary skepticism or disagreeability who might immediately jump in and go, wait a second, ostriches don't walk into laundromats, and priests don't walk into whorehouses, at least not in normal business hours. So to accept the premise on its face, that's a really interesting relationship.
Well, exactly so, because you've set the boundaries. You've said, I'm going to tell you a joke. You can park your reason for a second. You don't have to say, is it a conservative or a liberal ostrich? You can park it for a second. It's not going to hurt you. Because when you're listening to a joke or when you're listening to a play or a movie, you say, I get it. I've parked my thing because you aren't going to take advantage of me. Most of the political and quasi-political garbage that's in movies, television, and plays is we park our rationality, and then people try to sell us something. It's as if you went to the dentist and he put you under nitrous oxide and then whack you, right?
I did not pay for that.
I'm not going to let that happen again, for sure.
Takes a whole other dimension to turn your head and spit.
Oh.
See what I did?
Yeah, I did.
I took it from merely unairable to promotable.
Yeah, that's right.
Now it gets cut into the open.
Oh, great.
So, Glengarry,
Yeah.
have you seen the current version?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they're doing great.
Why is it great?
Well, it's a terrific play and terrific cast. I mean, what else do you want? I mean, they could pass out little things that say, if you collect 14 of these, we'll give you 10% off on Rinso White and Rinso Blue, but they don't got to.
The thing that's, forgive me again, you've talked about it 1,000 times, but Chuck, I even remember back in the day when you were doing American Buffalo, and that was maybe your second play?
Something like that, I don't know.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But even then, there was like a weird, forgive me, not weird, but there was a reverence around the words. And I remember the guy who was directing that. Was it Walter Huber, maybe?
Walter Huber actually played Teach.
Yeah, right. And you played like Bobby, was
Bobby,
it?
that's right. I played Bobby. Yeah.
But I remember going out for drinks with these guys while they were rehearsing. And the conversation was, we just can't mess with any of it. Right? What's he mean here with this dash versus this ellipses? What's he mean here with it? And so that was really the first time I heard actors talking with that level of
Reverence.
yeah, and care.
Yeah.
So how did that happen with your second play? I get it now, but I mean, there's just this eternal struggle, it seems, between actors who want to make things their own, directors who might want to take a spin, versus writers, right, who normally take it in the neck, but occasionally one comes along who you dare not screw with.
Well, they finally gave Henry Fonda an Oscar for all of his great work. It was a Lifetime Achievement Oscar, meant thank you, go die now. So he said he wanted to thank all the directors who broke him of his good ideas.
Wow.
So any actor who wants to... Nobody ever liked my work except two groups. One is the actors, the other is the audience. So an actor who sees the worth of my work, which is very flatteringly most of them, wants to do that work. They don't want to use it as an excuse, right, to, quote, be themselves or to, quote, investigate the character. All they have to do is get up there, and the great ones realize that, and say the stupid words.
Right. Right.
Because that's all there is.
Right.
There isn't any character beyond that.
Well, if you take your finest script and compare it to, I don't know, Mozart, something that's been written, it's just language, right? Notes over here, words and letters over here.
Well, exactly. It's the same thing. You don't want to take a Mozart and say, we mind if I improvise? You mind if I, do it or don't do it?
Did you write "always be closing," or was that already an idiom?
No, that's an idiom. It's ancient. That's ancient.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
But back to Glengarry, that that stuck. But what really stuck for me, and what I should have asked you about initially because you brought it up, was just the business of. Well, it is the business of lying. It's cons, it's grifters and thieves you described in your poker game, and writing about petty crooks in American Buffalo and maybe bigger crooks in Glengarry.
House of Games.
directed that, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you ever been swindled? You've been conned?
Of course.
Me too.
You ever go to the doctors?
I have. Yeah.
You ever buy a car in a car lot?
I have, yeah.
Okay. So what's that about? Anyone who walks onto the car lot wants to get swindled. We're saying, my God, where'd you get that shirt? And you, where do you work out? Your wife is so pretty over there. What are you driving? Oh, that's a very, very good car. I'm glad you came over here because I got a special thing, right? Ha, 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 this guy really loves me. Any car you drive off the lot, next week it's a hunk of junk. It's a frickin' car, right? So we love to go. Somebody said a crush is an absence of information, right? That's good, isn't it?
A crush is an absence of. Wow, I mean, it's pretty fatalistic. You're saying the more you know, the less you love.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The information might be good or bad, but a crush is an absence of it. You get the endorphins, bam, now all of a sudden, wow, please take my money, I'm going to leave my wife and blah, 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 and lose my thing, my kids will never talk to me. But, hi, honey, what are you doing tonight?
So how does that translate to your work? I mean, if the audience starts out with an absence of information,
yeah,
of course, I mean, they must be ignorant because the play hasn't begun yet. But then you tease them along.
Well, that's the whole point, and that's what very few people understand. Because it's very hard to write a play because most people just don't have. Most people can't tell a joke. Did you ever notice that?
I have.
There were apparently these two Irishmen, and the one guy says to his right, they don't know how to tell a joke. So if you don't know how to tell a joke, you don't know how to write a play, because a play is basically a joke. I want to get your attention, I'm going to lead you along, make you wonder what's going to happen next, and then pay it off in a way you didn't understand. There's no difference between a joke and Othello.
Except for maybe 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's right. But also, it's possible to condense plays, and part of the problem is they're overwritten. I wrote a 10-second version of Oedipus Rex. So it takes place on a windswept mountain in Thebes. At rise, Oedipus and a kindly shepherd, right? Oedipus says, "Ho, kindly shepherd, what news?" Shepherd says, "You your mother." Correct.
Jocasta, as I recall.
That's right, you bet.
Yeah, one of the greatest peripeteias, I think Aristotle would have called it, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe one of the first ones. But that whole notion of, I riffed on that years ago when somebody invited me to do a TED Talk of all things. But anagnorisis and peripeteia and the Aristotelian definition of a tragedy vis-a-vis dirty jobs struck me as an interesting way to maybe string out a story, maybe surprise people.
What Aristotle says, you don't want to string out the story, you want to condense it, right? Single action, right? Single place. Day and a half. You want to condense it. You don't want to struggle out.
Well, condense the time.
Yeah.
But the story itself, I guarantee you do a 10-second version of Othello at Broadway, there are going to be calls for some sort of refund.
I thought, I like Shakespeare very much. First off, he was like me. He was a Jew, and secondly, he was a terrific writer. But I think it's very easy. The one bit that I'd put in if I could fix Othello, right, is Othello turns to Iago before the fact, and he says, Iago, where's my lucky pillow?
Where's my lucky pillow?
Yeah.
Out. No, that's Macbeth.
Yeah.
Othello, Iago. Oh, I got nothing. I want so bad to have a pithy
a quote.
Othello thing, but no, I don't have it. Crap. I got some Macbeth.
No, do not say that word.
Oh, right. That's a theater thing, right? Yeah, but we're not before a performance, are we?
We're not in a theater.
We're not in a theater.
No, it still counts.
That's interesting. Explain that old, what is that?
I can't and I won't, but the Greeks, right, spent a great deal of time talking about the honored ones. And the honored ones are the Eumenides, who are the Furies. And they say, you really don't want to attract their attention, so I'm going to apologize to the honored ones, and let's move on.
Are you suspicious?
Everybody's suspicious. The only problem is very few of us are suspicious of the things we should be suspicious of.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
How does suspicion inform your worldview, your work, or fill in the blank however you want? But I'm really interested, and that's really because it gets to your book and it gets to your work, and whether it's suspicion or skepticism or doubt, all those things feel adjacent, and you seem to be either afflicted or blessed with all of it.
Well, the thing is, anyone who's ever worked for a living, who's ever sat down at the kitchen table and said, here's a piece of yellow paper, here's a column of how much we're making, here's a column of how much we're spending, what do we do? Has to become a reasonable person, right? And because they have to ask that as of everything, right? As Tom Sowell says, it's just not that complex. As Hayek says, and as Milton Friedman says, it's just not that complex. What do I want? What do I actually want? What is it actually going to cost? How will I know when I'm done? How will I evaluate if it was worth it? What do I do then? Because that's how the people who actually work for a living and the people who actually sit down at the kitchen table rule their lives. They don't have time to say, please piss on me and tell me it's raining, because I want to take my time up with putting men and women's sports, and I want to open the border because that makes me feel good. So the Constitution is basically a guide to sitting down at the kitchen table and saying who gets to do what to who, what happens if I don't like it, what happens if they don't respond to the Constitution, what are my options? Because I want to be in charge as a voter. Right? I don't want to give my I don't want to give anything up. It's enough that I have to give up my hard-earned money. I don't want to give up my self-respect and put my reason in my back pocket to somebody who's the best idea they can come up for a slogan for their 2024 run is joy. I mean, what does that mean, right? So this person is saying, if you believe this, if you vote for this, you will vote for anything, which is all about what all of the obscenities we see today, right? Letting criminals in, letting them out the back door, denigrating the police, letting men into women's sports, letting Harvard say, kill the Jews, and in fact, what the left is saying constantly, if you believe this, you'll believe anything, because guess what happens if you don't? Even John Fetterman, right? Terrific. He's going out. He's a good man. He happens to be a Democrat. He's a good man. He comes out and says he wants to support Israel. They say, oh, you know what? He's obviously lost his mind, right? So we have to keep our head when all about us are losing theirs and blaming it on us, as Rudyard Kipling said.
So it's a kind of plea for reason, I think, what you're talking about. If you're suspicious and skeptical in a healthy way, and by the way, you would probably know this. Somebody told me that the quote from Descartes has been mangled, ergo cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. I read somewhere that the better translation, or maybe the more accurate one, was I doubt, therefore I am. So his whole existence is either rooted in his ability to think or his decision to doubt. I like the decision to doubt more, but regardless, if it informs a plea for reason, whether it's in a budget from a kitchen table or a kind of explanation that you offer in this book, The Disenlightenment, at base, it's an explanation.
Well, yeah, you got to say what's actually happening. But if someone says, oh, no, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? You're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but what's actually happening is different than, like, all those things you just mentioned, which are now their own separate headlines, and it leads a lot of people to want, how, like Riley Gaines has sat here, right, and so we have this conversation about how in the world did the frog stay in the boiling water so long as to make that
Because
palatable?
it can't get out. That's the thing, that someone who's like tripled down on a whole life of believing one thing, and they formed a coterie, which is, they can't leave. Someone who's on the left says, oh my God, if I allow myself to perceive this nonsense, I'm probably going to have to speak out or lose my self-respect. But if I keep my self-respect and speak out, I'm going to lose my wife, my job, and my friends, and my livelihood, and perhaps my kids. So people get so firmly entrenched. For someone to actually break free is called heroism, which is what the Jews did leaving Egypt, because they didn't want to leave. 80% of them stayed behind. They said, I'm happy here. And as soon as they left, they said, I want to go back. But the thing that I think is interesting about Descartes, I think, therefore I am, is it was taken up in the original version of The Little Engine That Could. Remember The Little Engine That Could has to cry?
I think I can.
Exactly. But the original version, he's saying, I think I can, therefore I am I can.
Well, how did it work out? I forget how that story ends.
He gets the goods across the mountain to the good little children in time for Christmas.
Well, I mean, by way of comparison, the person who ran on joy thought she could too. She thought she could. She thought she could. And the people around her thought she could.
Yeah.
And that engine couldn't.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important, I mean, whether it's positivity or belief or whatever it is, in the end, it is Hamlet, right? I mean, you lose the name of action. It's not what you think. It's not even what you say.
Well, see, that's why Hamlet's such a great play, is the greatest play in the English language, greatest piece of literature in the English language, because it's not that he's indecisive, and it's not because, it's someone, Ernest Jones says it's Hamlet and Oedipus. It's not that he wants to screw his mother and blah, blah, blah. It's that his whole world fell apart. He came home from college. His dad's been murdered. Hamlet should be king, and and everyone's turning against him. He doesn't know what to do, and everything he wants to do is wrong. He wants to kill his uncle. How's that going to help? He wants to tell off his mother. How's that going to help? How Polonius seems to be against him, and Polonius's daughter, who's Hamlet's girlfriend, seems to be in league with her father. His two best friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, want to kill him. This guy's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So many of us have been in that place, in that long night when everything that you knew falls apart, and you're involved. That's what PTSD is. You're involved in a cognitive dissonance such that ghosts are talking to you, for Christ's sake. So it's another part of your mind saying, get a hold on it, get a hold on it. And they're telling you things you'd rather not know. Hamlet would rather not know that his mother and uncle conspired to kill his dad.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot there, but the business of rather not knowing, the business, back to your ostrich for a moment, all right? He didn't walk into a laundromat. He just walked down the beach and stuck his head in the sand.
Yeah.
And stayed that way. How much of that is in this book, our unwillingness to look squarely at a thing?
Well, it's all in that book. That's what the book is about to a large extent. It's about repression, because all of drama is about repression. Because if it weren't repressed, it wouldn't be drama. People come in and say, oh, you got a black hat, so you're the bad guy. I got a white hat, so I'm a good guy. You say things, everyone says, oh, that's the bad guy. That's bullshit. That's melodrama, right? But in drama, each person acts for the reason he thinks is best. And the audience has got to say, in the best of all possible worlds, yeah, he's got a point. The other guy's got a point too. How are they going to work it out?
Is it that the cognitive dissonance you're talking about when you put the bad guy in the white hat and the good guy in the black hat?
No. What that is repression. It's saying, I'm going to take your time. I'm not going to tell you. A rabbi, a priest, and a minister go in to a laundromat. So you see that it's possible to have ecumenical differences and still get together to engage in a task which is common to us all, which is doing our laundry. Everyone has to do laundry. We may have someone do it for us at one remove, but there's a bunch of bullshit. But that's what most things passing as drama today are.
But that's the brilliance of that joke, and whatever iteration it is. Let's just go with the ostrich and the whore and the priest.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the fact that these three are together is implausible, and the fact that they're walking into a laundromat is statistically impossible. But the fact that the laundromat itself exists as a place into which they can walk, well, we've all done that. So, like, you've given me something real to hang on to. I know what a laundromat is, and I know what these individual three disparate things are, but I've never, ever, ever imagined them together before.
Oh, but you can.
I can.
On the other hand, if I were to say to you, God created the heavens and the earth and everything that's in them, and blah, 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 and then God took a rib from Adam's side and made a woman and blah, blah. You say, what the this is nonsense, right? One would say of that myth, it's nonsense, but one doesn't say either of the ostrich myth or the myth of wokeism. This is absurd. In addition, it's blasphemous.
Some did.
What?
Some
do.
did.
That's correct.
Some did. I mean, that's the great story. That's why this book is kind of important. And like so many books, the subtitle might even be better than the title. But I mean, politics, horror, and entertainment.
Yeah.
An ostrich, a priest, and a whore. Three things that normally aren't grouped up together. You do that a lot.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You know, I started realizing, check that. Tom Sowell did one of his wonderful books about 15 years ago called Dissolving America or something like that. I'm so sorry I put up. It's a great book where he describes everything that's happening today.
Is this Tom Sowell you're talking
Tom Sowell, yeah.
The best.
Now, let's find the name of that book. It's Dissolving America.
Dissolving America.
It's better than that. But
just so people know, he's got to be in his 90s.
I think he's 90 or 91.
And he's out of the Chicago school.
Yes, he's out of the Chicago school in Moulton and Freeman. And interesting, out of the Chicago school in 1914, one of the precursor great economists, who's a progressive, was Thorstein Veblen. And he, of course, is famous for writing Theory of the Leisure Class, Social Justice. Oh, yeah.
Dismantling America.
Dismantling
There you
America.
go.
That's what it is. Thank you. Dismantling America.
Look at that, 5 stars, of course.
Oh, it's
774 ratings.
It's a magnificent book. The guy, he writes
He can't write a bad book.
Well, I mean, people like that and people like Doug Murray and people like Abigail Schreier, I mean, and Barry Weiss, they're such an inspiration to me. I say, can you be more concise, Dave? Can you write better? Can you write clearer? Can you take out the nonsense and get to the meat? So anyway, Thorstein Veblen is an economist at the University of Chicago in 1914, and he wrote a book called The Higher Learning about colleges. It was originally called The Higher Learning, an Exercise in Depravity. And so this is 110 years ago. He says the colleges are corrupt. He says the higher learning is selling nonsense. What they're doing is they're taking people who are, and they're saying rather than learning a trade, this is what you talk about, that they don't have to learn a trade. What they'll have to do is broaden their mind. So what they start doing is they're selling extra things, extra credit for, as we see as we go along the years, life experience or extra credit for writing an essay, or in effect they're selling a diploma. So what he says is that what happens is people get out of an undergraduate degree, they don't know a thing. So then they go to a graduate degree, and that's the first time that they're going to start to learn perhaps something applicable to their life. But the problem is that they've already been warped by 4 years of saying, you have all the knowledge inside of you, right? Come express, discover yourself. Write a journal, right? So here's where we end up. That colleges first they start selling football, right? Okay, then they start selling individual study. Then they start selling wokeism, right? They're constantly, as Thorstein Veblen said in 1914, giving you a come on, a special treat in the box of Cheerios, right, to induce you to come. So what's the latest treat that they're selling? Do you know?
On the college side?
Yeah.
The latest treat in terms of to get you to enroll?
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
promise of getting the diploma?
No. Diploma.
Okay, so the inducement.
The latest treat.
I mean, if it's not the student union, if it's not the football, it's not the shared experience of cohabitation and all the normal stuff. Tell me, what is it?
Kill the Jews.
Oh,
That's the latest treat that these swine are selling. Come and yell "Free Palestine" from the blah blah blah. Burn stuff down, disrupt everything, make the Jews feel blah blah blah, and dare us to take arms against you, which the schools won't do because that's what they're selling. They aren't selling education, right? They're selling obscenity. They're saying, yeah, you bet.
okay. Well, let's go there. Let's talk about Harvard and whatever other hotbed you want. I think I'm most interested in understanding what disgusts you more. Is it the existence of people calling for this kind of insanity? Is it the tolerance of the people who should be running that asylum to allow it to happen? Or is it the silence?
Well, it's the whole thing.
Around
Listen,
it.
we either have laws against hate speech or we don't. We either have laws protecting students or we don't. Everybody on those campuses is violating the Civil Rights Act. The only reason they aren't enforced is because they're against Jews. Someone who can show me the error, write me a letter. I'll be glad. I don't find it. So that there's a couple things we can do. One is, I'm going to speak to my fellow Jews. Two things. First, take your kids out of those schools. Just take them out. What are they going to learn other than that you, the parents, and the government and the schools are willing to see them abused? That's what they're learning, that they better keep their frickin' head down or they're going to get hit on the head. What are they going to do with the degree from that school other than go to work for somebody who likes that school, who's going to believe in the same thing? So the first thing is take your kids out of school. Just take them out. So the question, what do I do next, is exactly the same question that the slaves had to ask when they left Egypt. They didn't want to leave. 80% of them stayed behind because they said, wait a second, what do I do next? What do I do next? Well, you ain't going to find out what you do next till you leave Egypt. And you're not going to find out what you do next till you take the kids out of the school. Take them out of school for the love of God. The second is, for the love of God, stop voting for the Democrats. It's not Franklin Roosevelt anymore, and he hated the Jews. He sent them back to die in the concentration camps, for God's sake. Stop voting for what do you think that you're doing? Voting for these people who don't like the state of Israel. They refuse to meet with the Israeli ambassador. Kamala Harris, who went to a sorority meeting rather than preside over the Senate, which was her job. They're just willing to sell you out. Why? Because they know that for 100 years, my fellow Jews have voted for the Democrats, whatever they do. And now they're killing us again in the streets of America. So just stop voting for them, for God's sake.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
You're out of F's to give, as they say. I get that. You live right up the road from here. You somewhere between Sodom and Gomorrah. There you are, in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
In fact, you wrote a terrific book, Oink Oink.
Oh, yeah, everywhere in Oink Oink.
Everywhere in Oink Oink, which was really an indictment on and of Hollywood.
Yeah.
But as you started to, I guess I'm just asking the obvious question, when did you stop being a liberal? And when did you stop caring about who knew it?
Well, the two things happened independently. I think, but I wrote it. I was doing a play in New York with Nathan Lane. It was a political comedy, very funny, called November. And I wrote an article called Political Civility for the Village Voice.
Was this about Lincoln?
No, it was about it was about a contemporary president.
Okay.
Who's gets jammed up because nobody likes him. And so he has no money left to buy his library. And so it's Thanksgiving, and so these guys come to him from the turkey lobby, and they say, Mr. President, we'd like you to pardon a turkey as you always do. We always give you 50 grand to pardon a turkey. And he says, well, yeah, I could use the money. They say, good, this year we want you to pardon 2 turkeys because we have an alternate because the last year's turkey got sick. So he says, well, 2 turkeys, that would be like 50 grand a turkey, that would be 100 grand. They say, no, we ain't giving you 100 grand because you're a loser. Your poll numbers are lower than Gandhi's cholesterol. With 50 grand, take it or leave it. So he thinks about it and he says, wait a second, do I have the power to pardon turkeys? So his yes man says, yes, Mr. President, you do. He says, good, get those guys back here. Tell them I want $300 million right now. I'm going to pardon every turkey in the United States of America. So that's the premise of the play. So I wrote an article about political civility. I said, we got to be civil to each other. I said, I'm not even civil to myself. I always refer to myself as a brain-dead liberal. So the Village Voice comes out, whole front page. Mamet says, why I am no longer a brain-dead liberal. Boom, everybody loses my number.
Where are we now? What year?
I don't know, 25 years ago, something like that.
25. Okay, so around 2000, right around the...
I think so, yeah. So I looked around, I said, oh, well, that's interesting. It's like Sarah Silverman said. She got whacked for something or other. She said, it's my own party. And I wanted to say to her, dude, that's right.
Yeah. So you lost friends, for real?
Yeah.
Well, or did you?
Well, I lost acquaintances.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I made friends.
Like who?
Well, Shelby Steele was one. Mm-hmm. Tom Sowell used to hang out with him. Victor Davis Hanson. Mm-hmm. Abigail Schreier.
Terrific.
Barry Weiss.
Yep.
Nellie Boyle. Susie Weiss.
Now, Barry Weiss, that's Free Press, right?
Yeah.
And don't you write a cartoon for them like every week now or something?
I do a cartoon for them every week. And I'll tell you one of my best cartoons.
I want to see it.
It's Benjamin Franklin, and the title is When Benjamin Franklin Realized He Had to Stop Smoking Pot. And Benjamin Franklin is saying, and for America's national bird, I suggest the turtle. The other one, I mean, how raunchy can we get on this program?
It's your sandbox, man.
The other one, I think, even better it's about Me Too, right? And it says, when will it end? When will it end? And it's a picture of the Cookie Monster, right? And the caption is, he didn't realize the mic was still hot. And he's singing, P is for pussy, that's good enough for me. So these are the kind of cartoons I do every week for the Free Press. Check them out, people.
I will. Now, what's interesting, though, I mean, Barry Weiss, female, seems to be or have undergone some sort of, I don't know, similar transformation, revelation. Have you guys talked much about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was very famously, she and Nellie, her wife, were the apex reporters and columnists for the New York Times, and were adored by the New York Times, as they should have been. And then Barry said something that didn't hew to the party line. And they said, no, give me a retraction or you're fired. And so she wrote a letter, you should all look it up, beautiful letter where she resigned from the New York Times, and with nothing. And so then she and Nellie created this magnificent newspaper called the Free Press, which is now extraordinarily successful.
Have you talked to Megyn Kelly?
I talked to her a long time. I'd love to talk to her again. I talked to her before, 2 iterations ago. Mm-hmm. She's great.
I think you guys would get along terrifically. Yeah. I know she and Barry have become close. But back to the book and back to Harvard in a way. The point I was trying to make, and I'm not sure I did it justice, was that while Abby Schreier's story is going on and we're talking about men and women's sports and asking ourselves, how could that possibly be happening? We're seeing this kind of thing happen in Harvard, and we're wondering how in the world can we tolerate that kind of naked anti-Semitism, while at the same time we're dealing with whatever we've been dealing with the border and trying to understand how we can be told that that's a secure border while we're looking at 10,000 people coming across it. Your book outlines a dozen of these different things, and they're all seemingly unrelated because they have their own little brilliant essays. But somehow or another, there's grout that connects them.
Yes, that's right. It's in the book.
What is the grout, though? Is the very fact that these things all happen contemporaneously the point? Like, could they have not happened individually? Would they have garnered enough attention and skepticism and doubt that they would have been shouted down?
Well, when I come to the end of the book, as I say, I ask myself the same question. I say, I don't understand. Why do we have people who want to free Palestine and we have people who are queers for Palestine, and at some point they're connected when they want to kill each other? Why, at the same time, do we have people who want to open the border, and at the same time we have people who want to give money to, who have anti-Semitism, and they're all part of what seems to be a same movement? What do they have to do with each other? And I noted, I list a lot of the enormity. Who in the world would stand up for women playing against men's sports? It's absurd. And yet those same people are in line with the people who want illegal alien criminals to come in. What does it all mean? And the answer is, I said, I've seen this before. So people say of chess, how many moves can someone think in advance? Oh, a great chess player is someone who can think 3 moves in advance. It's not true. Nobody can think 3 moves in advance. There are billions. But what the great chess player can do is recognize a similarity of situations. Say, this looks just like that. I get it. I see what that is. So what we're looking at is a civilization which has been abandoned. Like Obama gets out of office. Trump, what's his name? Biden comes in, and after Trump, and things start to go to hell. In whose interest is it? And the answer is, it's in the interest of various groups.
Cui bono.
Various groups who come into an abandoned city. So I'm saying what we're looking at is an abandoned city, just like Moscow in 1812, just like Paris in 1944, like Milan in 1943, Naples 1943, 1943. The invaders, the Bidens, the Obamas, have retreated, and the new administration, in this case Trump, has not yet taken power. So you got 4 years, nobody is in power in the White House. So in that vacuum of power, you get staffers, and you get ideologues, and you get anti-Semites, and you get all sorts of racists and so forth. Each one says, you know what, give me that auto pen. Jimmy, you got to get out of Afghanistan the other day. I let you get that. It was stupid. But you said, I want to get out overnight. Okay, here's what I want to do. Okay, you owe me now. I want to not only open the border, that's great. I want to fly people in and pay for them to come into this country, right? That's what I want to do, and you owe me because I did it. Wait a second, Jenny says, wait a second, what about me? I didn't get to use that auto pen lately. You know what I want to do? I want to put men playing in women's sports. I say, well, Jenny, that's stupid. Now you say, yeah, I don't know if it's stupid or not, but so is opening the border, and so is getting out of Africa. That's the fuck what I want to do. Billy says, wait a sec. It's an open city. So just like Paris in 1944, you got the Marxists, the communists, the Trotskyites, the Lovestonites. You got the resistance. Everyone is getting together for the moment, if that works. But on the other hand, they're saying, you know, I'm going to go loot over there. The other thing you get into in an open city is people settling scores. Things fall apart. Then someone who says, well, yeah, I get it. You get to do this. You get to do the border. You get to do men and women's. You know what? I don't like that motherfucker Trump. Here's what I'm going to do. Okay, we're all, He's got that right. You know what I'm I'm going to give, what's her name, Stacey Abrams. I'm going to give her a couple bucks. Well, okay, how much? Well, what the difference does it make? $2 billion out the door. So what we're looking at is an open city.
Things fall apart.
Things fall apart.
The center cannot hold.
Cannot hold. Well, that, he was the greatest poet. Yeats, the greatest poets in Shakespeare.
Mere anarchy loosed upon the world.
That's right.
Is that what rough beast his hour come round at last?
The blood-dimmed tide and
The second
everywhere
coming,
a
yeah.
ceremony of innocence
Is drowned.
And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. Great stuff.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was out of, he also, Crazy Jane Talks to the Bishop, whole series.
Might be. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
So that's a lot too, Dave. I mean,
Yeah.
to my earlier point, well, here it is. The subtitle "Stare Me in the Face: Politics, Horror, and Entertainment."
Here's the thing.
That was everything you just said was political, horrifying, and entertaining.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much. So with Trump, who's, I worked and worked with a lot of geniuses in the arts and so forth, but genius, as far as I understand it, is talent beyond my ability to understand it. Right? Somebody can be a greatly talented, like Shakespeare. Yeah, I get it. He's a genius. I get it. I'm a writer too. But Trump has a genius for politics that it's beyond anything I've ever seen. That I would, like I and my getting into the final boarding process, got our heads down during the Biden administration and said, in effect, I hope it lasts out my time because there's nothing to be done. And Trump says, well, no, that's actually not true. Right? You got a fucked up situation, and it's a Gordian knot, but we're going to untie it. How are we going to do it? One thing at a time. Because it's very, very easy to say, oh, there's so much to do, I can't do anything.
It's the time, though, David. It's like, I mean, is he really a political genius, or is he? That's what I meant earlier when I talked about the great man theory in history. They're just, if they're out of their time, they're just men.
Of course.
But if things triangulate in such a way that all of a sudden, see, I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about all of this through the lens not of belief but of persuasion. Like, what do you find persuasive, and do you care, honestly? Because I think that I think the country basically has two kinds of people in it, and it's not Republican and Democrat. It's persuadable and unpersuadable. And whether it's advertising or entertainment, I think it feels anyway like you have to know at least that much. Are the people in your audience persuadable? And if they are, do you wish to persuade them? Or do you simply want to take a position, say a thing, and let the what's the Latin for let the heavens fall? Whatever that.
Ruat soelum, fiat justitia ruat soelum.
Yes. Let the heavens fall. That's where I feel like you're coming from. I'm not saying you're not persuasive.
I'm not trying to persuade anybody, because did anybody ever persuade you of anything? Nobody ever persuaded me of anything.
Well, you know what? Hold on. I'll tell you. I'll speak for Chuck, who was a. May I?
I can't stop you.
I do believe you were fairly dyed-in-the-wool, a liberal young man once upon a time, who drip, drip, drip. Right. It took time.
Yep.
But was it Larry Elder? Was it Dennis Prager?
Both.
Right. So it takes
drip,
it takes
drip,
time.
Drip. That's the answer. Is drip,
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 drip.
drip.
Yeah, sure it is. Drip, drip, drip. Because I think I went a little bit nuts for the first couple of years after I got blacklisted. I actually knew I did, because I was like Hamlet. That's the first time I understood Hamlet, because I was out of my mind. Everything I believed in was wrong, though everything that all the people I thought believed in me tossed me to the wolves. I didn't know what the was happening. I thought, Jesus Christ, here I am, just a guy. I just write stuff, people laugh, people cry. Give me a couple bucks, I give it to my wife. She buys shoes.
Come
That's
on.
fine.
Wait a minute. There's got to be some other alternative. I mean, this sounds so supercilious, forgive me, but I mean, if you don't think of yourself as the greatest living playwright, a lot of people do. And so you surely must be aware of that at this time when you feel as though you have been blacklisted, and that's different than it's just some guy who writes words, and right?
I don't think so. No. Here's the thing. It's like they said, the whatchamacallit is always the last to know. Getting betrayed is one of the least enjoyable of human experiences.
It's a drag.
Yeah, when you give someone you trust and you think that they admire you or they believe in you and you would support them, and then all of a sudden you found out that they've betrayed you. That's really taking it down to the metal. And so
It's operatic, is what it is.
So that's what I was going through for a couple of years. I said, I just don't understand. Was I wrong? What in the world is going on? And so for answers, I went to Dennis Prager and Larry Elder and Victor Davis Hanson and Tom Sowell and Tom Paine and J.S. Mill and Locke, and I just read and read and read and read and read, and eventually, like the dripping, it began to make sense that what we're looking at here is an ancient human problem.
So you were persuaded. You simply, you weren't sold. You bought something. Like to take your metaphor, you went on to the used car lot and you told the salesman to pound sand. And you said, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to kick the tires. I'm going to think about it. I might go home, have a meal, come back the next day, maybe test drive it, right? And so I knew we'd get to it. It took an hour. But when we talk about skepticism and persuasion and all of these things together, and then look back at your work and the role of the confidence man and the idea of betrayal, you just said it perfectly. There's no more exquisite pain than to be betrayed.
That's right.
Whether you're swindled by a trusted financial advisor, been there, or whether true love didn't turn out to be all that true or all that lovely, right? We've all kind of felt those things. The degree to which that exists in your fiction and your nonfiction. That's your, since we're doing French stuff, your raison d'etre?
Yeah, that'll do.
I mean, tell me I'm close.
Oh, you're perfect.
All right.
You're
I can live
perfect.
with perfect.
Also, I'll tell you what made a huge impression on me when I was first saying, I don't understand. I met some people at my synagogue, one of them, a wonderful man named Andre Bello, who's a very close friend of Dennis's, and so forth. And he started talking to me very gently, and I was so impressed by his demeanor that I think that's what helped me turn the corner, that he wasn't didactic, right, and that he wasn't bombastic. He just said, well, here's what I think. Here's a couple books you might want to read. You got any questions, ask me. I said, wow, that's not how dare you, or certainly you can't mean, or all this nonsense that seems to be the left's only riposte to a request to explain their religion. Oh, what are you, a Trump lover?
Yeah, right.
You can't say. One of the things I realize, people say, you can't say that. What they're doing is they aren't objecting, they're warning. They're saying, don't you know that you can't say that?
Right.
Right.
Let me help you. Let me give you a helpful little tip.
Yeah, really.
So you won't, that sound you're hearing is the ice cracking beneath your feet. Nobody was talking about cancellation back when you were describing it just now. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's part of why your brain was like struggling to make sense of the fact that why would friends turn their backs on me? Why is any of this happening? We just didn't have the right word for it, or maybe it just hadn't happened to a degree where you could see it as an inevitability.
But the prodromo, since we're talking Latin, was when I first started hearing people say, this may not be politically correct, but. So that went on for 20 years.
But everything before but's bullshit,
this
right?
may not be politically correct, but. Well, why does one think one has to introduce a statement of one's position by acknowledging that there's an alternative? That's brainwashing.
Or a bungled attempt to be persuasive, the faked expression of reasonableness, right? I mean, all of that stuff that precedes but really is bullcrap 99% of the time. It's it's the stuff of confidence. The truth comes after but. or at least the truth of what you mean to say.
Well, you know, Abraham Lincoln, one of our presidents apparently, said you can fool some of the people some of the time, and fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And I thought, Abe, you didn't live through this time. But it's true. It's true. I mean, the risorgimento of MAGA and Trump proves it's true. Whether or not, whatever happens next, Abe, rest in peace. You cannot fool all the people all the time. Wonderful.
You got to help me with that. Resurgio, what?
The resurgence.
Yeah, but give me the Latin again.
Risorgimento. That's Italian.
Pretty close, though.
Yeah.
Interesting call back to Lincoln. As I recall, it was he who ushered in the pardoning of the turkeys.
Oh, was it? Oh, that's true. That's true. It was his son.
It was his
said,
son.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to kill the turkey. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a loose translation. I think in the original text,
Yeah.
it could have been different. I don't. Last thing I'm going to do is rewrite David Mamet. But
No,
that-
not at all. I mean, there's a famous story that a kid has a pet.
Armadillo, ostrich.
No.
We're working our way through the whole freaking animal kingdom here.
He's got a pet turkey, and he loves the turkey. And it comes to be Thanksgiving. He loves the turkey, loves the turkey, loves the turkey. Have I just? That probably this joke up. You know what? Ask me back next time, and I'll finish that joke.
Now that's called a tease.
Oh yeah, good, excellent.
Yeah. You got somewhere to be? Are we done? Can I
No,
plug your
no,
book
I
a
got
little bit?
nothing. Are you kidding?
Okay.
I'm just here. As my
Are
wife
you-
said, I should begin every sentence by prefacing it, whore that I am.
Your wife said that?
Yeah.
She sounds terrific. What's her name?
Her name is Rebecca Pigeon. She is terrific. I'm crazy about her.
Nice.
You married Rebecca Pigeon.
Oh, you bet I did about 35 years ago.
Oh, well, that explains why she's in all your freaking movies. She was now. Was that around the time Spanish Prisoner, Steve Martin? and all
Before that, she was doing a play of mine in London called Speed the Plow, which you eventually did here. And she was in that. And then I did a play with her and William H. Macy off Broadway, ran for about a year and a half, called Oleana, which is a very politically upsetting play. And then we've been working together ever since.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
What'd she think of your book?
She loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a great pal, a great supporter.
The book is called The Disenlightenment: Politics, Horror, and Entertainment.
What gets published? I don't know.
Well, you should, because The Disenlightenment just came out. Somehow or another, unless you're going to tell me that you and Rebecca published this yourself or something.
No. It was published by some guys and blah, blah, blah.
No, who publishes this thing? Seriously.
Well, you have to tell me.
Oh, no, I'm looking inside. David Mamet is a fantastic writer. Mark Levin, that's nice.
Yeah.
Look at Ben Shapiro says some nice things. Who publishes this thing? I'm only asking because I can't figure out who published your movie, Henry Johnson, or who produced it. How'd that happen?
Well, we found some people who wanted to put it in like a direct.
HarperCollins.
HarperCollins, thank you.
HarperCollins, yeah. Henry Johnson, you can find it at henryjohnsonmovie.com. And it stars Shia LaBeouf and Evan Jonigkeit.
Terrific.
It's a pretty good movie.
The book is The Disenlightenment. The movie is Henry Johnson. You can download that at henryjohnson.com. You can purchase
henryjohnsonmovie.com.
henryjohnsonmovie.com.
Thank you so much.
And you can pick up the book wherever HarperCollins sells his books these days, which I imagine is pretty much everywhere.
Don't know.
Thank you for signing my stupid release. I got to tell you something, man.
Yeah.
This has been my relationship with releases over the years has probably been similar to yours.
I know you wrote that, yeah. Good.
Well, yeah, but that was my first draft. He shouldn't have said, just so the listener understands, we've got the same bullcrap release that every other person hands out. And there's some people, myself included, read these things and they see all the legal mumbo jumbo and they're like, you know something, why does it have to be this way? So David Mamet sends back our standard release and he's taken the time to read it. And he's crossed out certain sentences and this paragraph not here, this doesn't quite work. And I just looked at it and I was like, I can't believe I'm collaborating with David Mamet, on something written. This is amazing. So anyway, you inspired me. You don't have
wrote
to,
a new release?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, you don't have to sign it, but if you do, I want you to know that I've titled it. Where did I put it? Here it is. It's the David Mamet release, now for everyone. And it's the friendliest way I could come up with to say the same pile of crap that I need people to do.
You should have seen this release. It says, we get to use your likeness in anything
I know.
Now invented or forever invented. Yeah, I say, okay.
Throughout the universe.
Yeah, then until the end of time. Then it says we get to alter it in any way possible until the end of time. Well, you're going to Lola me and make me look like a beagle? I don't know about that. Then it says we get to make love to your wife on alternate Saturdays and piss in your mouth on Shavuos. I said, you know what?
I just can't do it. Well, first of all, I read the fine print. I read everything, and
too.
Obviously you do as well. And what happened was when the lawyers sent it back, I looked at it and I said, "Look, I understand what we're trying to do, but I'm offended too, and I'm embarrassed on behalf of myself, and I'm sorry that you had to read a bunch of nonsense." And all the lawyers tell me is, "Look, it's just the way it is." It's just, and I'm like, "But no." No, it's actually not just the way it is. There's a way to talk to people like they're human beings, and just to step away from the precipice, So I mean, I literally spent I'm still messing with it because look, it's a really hard thing. Like, these things are leaps of faith. You're if you don't know somebody, you're basically saying, I need you to trust me with your name and likeness forever in the future to help promote whatever this thing is. And that's a hell of a thing to ask.
Well, that was, yes, I understand. But
if you're going to be interesting, get the mic on your lip.
I understand. I get it. That's a little bit excessive, but it's completely understandable. The part that I found egregious was you're saying, and we get to alter.
That's what I thought. And they're like, well, it doesn't mean we're going to do that. I'm like, then why would you say it?
Exactly.
And the answer is because it's better to overreach. So on your way home, did you drive yourself here?
Yes.
Look at you. That's amazing.
How about that, huh?
You know who else did that? Gene Simmons came in here 2 months ago, got stuck in traffic, took him an hour and 45 minutes to get in here from Malibu. It's unbelievable, that guy.
I saw she's still stuck in the garage.
Different Gene Simmons.
She's still stuck in the... I'm talking about the rock star from Kiss. Gene,
that Gene Simmons?
Yes. He's still in the garage, too, tragically.
Okay.
All I would ask is that you read it, and if I have your permission to call my releases from this day forward, the David Mamet release.
Yeah.
It's the release that inspired me.
So what's in it for me?
Well, you know what? I predict, how many of these books you think we can sell? Like, if I really lean into it.
Oh, if you really lean into it, maybe 5,000.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
Sold.
Folks, this book, Whore That I Am, by David Mamet and Mike Rowe. It's a pop-up, and I think you're going to love it. The book is great. It's called The Disenlightenment. Obviously, I'm at your disposal. I owe you one for what that's worth.
So
Chuck, going. You have one question for David Mamet?
Yes, I got one question, and it really is, I just want to know if you're aware of this joke, because you're in it. I'm sure you are, where a drunk is on a subway, and a Methodist pastor is sitting there quietly, and the drunk is just going from side to side, and the Methodist pastor is thinking, please don't sit next to me. And the drunk sits right next to the Methodist pastor, belches right in his face. The Methodist pastor looks down his nose and says, cleanliness is next to godliness. That's John Wesley. He goes, oh, you, David Mamet.
Yeah, truer words were never spoken.
Key bono, everybody. See you next week.
If you like what you heard,
And even if you don't,
won't you please,
pretty please
subscribe?
Well, I hate to beg and I hate to plead, but please, pretty freaking